When you start playing a lot of these songs, there is a lot of thinking, making sure that you remember how to do it. But I think because I've been touring it so long now, a lot of it's become second nature. You have moments where your brain sort of wanders and then you sort of come back and you're like, oh, my hand's just doing it now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, think about what I'm having for dinner later. You know. I mean, I mostly enjoy riffing. I think riffing is my happy place. I think I prefer that to leads. But yeah, leads have their place and a little bit of lead is fun, but for the vast majority, yeah, I like going. It's good fun.
Of course, 100%.
Well, we blew pretty much our entire budget on that video.
Okay.
Just
Simple answer.
Yeah, that video is probably as nearly as expensive as the actual album was to make.
Tesseract are currently on their second lap of the tour around the UK in celebrating their album War of Being, which was a brilliant blend of both technically advanced musicianship, but also keeping the song and the storytelling at the center of that as well. Now, we are currently in Brighton ahead of their headline gig here tonight, and I'm delighted to be joined by guitarist James from the band. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks.
Now, before we get into Tesseract itself, I've realized recently you're actually in 2 bands and you work in PR as well. How do you logistically take care of all that, especially if you're on tour and kind of remote in some ways? How do you manage it all?
I don't sleep.
Okay, that's the secret.
I mean, to be fair, on tour, I mean, lots of bands will tell you, oh, they're so busy on tour. It's like, actually, you got loads of time. Like, as long as you don't stay up too late drinking or whatever, like, I find it, can get a good day's work done in the day, mostly before sound check. Then switch to gig mode after that.
Nice. Keeps you busy, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah.
Does that help in some way keep it from being a bit of a Groundhog Day scenario? Because tours can be kind of similar to you getting up to travel, you sound.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's something to do. It's like some of the other guys, into gaming and various other things. I guess I use mine, to have a job.
Fair enough. Now, does it feel in any way a little bit bizarre having a secondary tour of the UK of the album again? Does it feel like you've kind of gone back in time, or are you finding new ways of kind of enjoying this particular one?
No, I think the purpose of this tour is basically to go to places we haven't been. So we've not played the single city twice, and we're trying to go to a lot more sort of regional, smaller places. I guess over the last 18 months, the set's evolved. We've changed a lot of the songs out. We've actually got more War Being songs in the set now than we did last time.
Interesting.
And yeah, I think we've really settled into our groove and we're putting on our strongest performance yet, which is really nice. But we are coming towards the end though. When we hit the summer, we're doing Art Tangent Festival, and that kind of marks the end of this touring, which would have lasted 2 years by then. So.
Gosh, yeah, that is a long time. Now, over time, as you're playing songs live, I think there's probably a tendency you might develop things a little bit differently or play a little, licks, bits and pieces you didn't originally. Is that something you find yourself doing, or are you trying to keep as close to the original source as possible?
No, I think things always naturally evolve. I mean, we are quite limited in terms of what we can change because everything is sort of locked to the
click.
The click.
Yeah.
But I mean, subtle things like lead melodies, you sort of learn to maybe evolve, not necessarily change them, but just be a bit more dynamic with how you play them. And yeah, I guess the feel improves. I think that's one thing that I feel is noticeable, at least to us. I mean, it's probably very subtle, but there's probably, because we're quite comfortable with the material now, there's a bit more sort of feel and vibe and less of it being regimented, and that's exactly the same as the record.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of wonder that, especially when it comes to the progressive metal world that you're in, and you have moments of odd time signatures and also this kind of 4/4 syncopation. I wonder, in your head on stage, are you counting certain parts are quite challenging, or I guess over time you get more of a feel for the loop of this riff and you kind of do it that way? What's the balance there for you?
Yeah, I think it becomes quite second nature. Like when you start playing a lot of these songs, there is a lot of thinking, making sure that you remember how to do it. Like especially with some of the patterns, there are certain cues in the click track which we have from when we started playing the songs just to remind you to do certain things. But I think because I've been touring it so long now, a lot of it's become second nature. You have moments where your brain sort of wanders and then you sort of come back and you're like, oh, my hand's just doing it now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, think about what I'm having for dinner later, what work I got to do tomorrow, what bands I got to email back.
Of course.
And then keep playing it.
What are the sort of things that you're having cue to you as reminders? Is it things like, are you changing pedals yourself, or is that programmed in with MIDI?
That's all programmed in. Yeah, no, sometimes there are like odd clicks where if there's like quite an irregular pattern, there'll be a sort of click to remind you, right, this is where I play, right, this is where I play, and that sort of thing, which we don't necessarily need so much now, but when we first started playing these songs, we needed that just because there was a lot to remember. A lot of simple things to remember. It's not necessarily the part that's difficult, it's where the part is sometimes.
Right. Yeah, especially if you've got quite long songs as well. It's like that remembering in order at the right point must be quite challenging. When it comes to building the click tracks for these, is that something that you would all group together and figure out what the cues you need? Or is Jay kind of leading that from like, I'll take over where the one is, because you want like a different tone for the start of the beat, right?
Well, we've all got different mixes, so everyone's got their own click tracks however they want them. So Jay's click track's quite different. Not always, but in some cases, to what the guitars have got. Just because he hears the grooves in certain ways and needs a specific click track for that. And to be honest, I kind of go with the flow. I go with whatever click track Ackle wants for the guitars. And I'm like, yeah, that'll work for me.
Me too.
That'll do.
Now, the title track on War of Being is 11 minutes long, which is an absolute epic. I wonder, is that something that happens naturally as you're writing something? Or do you ever approach it like, I would love to create a song that is a long journeyed epic. You start that song with that in mind?
No, traditionally things have just always ended up as long as they ended up. Like for example, the best example is Concealing Fate, the first EP we did, which ended up being half an hour. And that just kept growing and growing and growing and so on. But with War of Being, although we didn't consciously make it 11 minutes, there was the thought behind wanting to do something that's a bigger body of work than we had done recently. If you listen to sort of Sonder and Polaris, they are quite both song-based records. And so we did think, right, yeah, we need to do something that's meatier and got a bit more to it than just a regular song. So there was that thought in the background, but that's where the planning stopped. Right. I think everybody on that. Funny story, actually, the original demo of it was actually 13 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But in the studio, working with producer Peter Miles, he hacked about 2 minutes out of it, which and it made it a better song.
Yeah, it feels very complete. It doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome. I also can't imagine what another couple of minutes would have been.
Oh, just some of the rest were longer, meandered a bit more, probably. I can't remember now, so long ago.
Do you yourself have a preference between playing within odd time signatures or syncopating over a 4/4, or does it not necessarily matter?
I enjoy it all. I enjoy complex rhythms. I enjoy playing simple stuff. So enjoy it all. It's all good fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask that as well, because there is quite a difference, I think, between doing a sort of like shreddy, busy lead guitar part, or just kind of doing ring outs or like an open sort of groove riff. Do you have one that you prefer doing live, either for ease or for enjoyment, or do you like the whole spectrum of it?
I have nothing like the whole spectrum of it. I mostly enjoy riffing. I think riffing is my happy place. Whether it's simple riffs or complicated riffs, it's just like, I like rhythm guitar. It's very satisfying and enjoyable. I think I prefer that to leads, but leads have their place, and a little bit of lead is fun. But for the vast majority, whether it's complex or whether it's just a simple thrash riff or whatever, I like going. It's good fun.
Of course, 100%. Now, you've filmed your live performance of War of Being at Radar Festival last year, and you've got a special event coming up in London for that. But I wonder, from a musician point of view, if you know you're filming something that night, do you enter that stage with a different set of like nervousness or pressure, feeling like this is going to be living on for a while, I need to nail this?
There was that, and there was also it was a one shot doing it with a choir, and then there was also loads of extra production. So there definitely was an element of like, quick, don't fuck this up. But then a lot of the songs were very well rehearsed, so it was just a case of basically not worrying too much and just playing as normal as possible.
Did you find yourself able to do that? Were you able to, during that gig, go, oh, I'm actually just enjoying this show and not even thinking about it being filmed?
Yeah, for the most part. There was one bit where we had a choreograph moment where I had to go up on a riser, and then I got up on the riser and I realized I'd left my tuner on, and so I had to run back down, turn it off, and run back up. And
but you can just shoot away from that for a moment.
It's just like, right, let's edit that bit out.
No one knows.
But for the most part, it worked out fine.
Great. Do you have a preference between different slots within a gig? I imagine mostly your headlining shows, you're certainly headlining this new headlined Radar Festival as well. Or do you kind of yearn for the days you kind of be an opening act and surprise a bunch of people that don't necessarily know what's coming? Do you have a preference there yourself?
Obviously being a headline act and having a really big show is a lot of fun. But being an opening act is you play early and you get to get on the beer, don't you? Right? that's also just as enjoyable, probably more enjoyable. And we get to do that actually in May. We're going out with Devin Townsend in the US. So we're, basically get to play early and then either have some beers or get an early night.
Oh yeah, as I age, that is the dream. Very nice. Do you have how are you sleeping here? Do you have a tour bus you're able to sleep between gigs? Okay, that's a bit of a game changer. That's fantastic.
We've got quite a nice bus, which we're sharing with the Omnific, the Openers.
Okay, great.
And yes, basically, you can go to bed whenever you like.
And you'll wake up in a new town.
Exactly.
What's to do here? More work.
Basically, yeah. Luckily, the bus had Wi-Fi as well, which is very handy.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, getting up in the morning, doing my day's work.
One of the things that really impressed me about, especially this recent album, is the music videos for that. I mean, the War of Being music video, it looks like an incredible CGI Hollywood blockbuster film. But, the touring is getting more expensive. Being in a van is generally not the most financially easy thing in the world. How have you been able to put together videos of that standard for this?
Well, we blew pretty much our entire budget on that video.
Okay. Just simple as
yeah, that video is probably as nearly as expensive as the actual album was to make, I think. But it was worth it because it's the first time we had new music out in 5 years. We needed to come back with a bang, so we threw everything at it. And then the Legion video, which followed after that, was done on a shoestring. In comparison, I think we were lucky that the label were able to give us enough of an advance to achieve that. But yeah, you have to be very careful with how you spend because, as you say, there isn't a huge amount of money in it.
Yeah. Oh, it certainly well. Yeah, I think I saw behind the scenes of Legion, and someone's like kind of shaking the box around. It totally works. Movie magic. Very cool. Now, because you're also working in the PR world, you must be plugged into new and up and coming bands and things. Are there a couple that are standout at the moment? Don't necessarily have to be on your books, but like that you think people might not be aware of just how promising this particular couple of bands are.
Well, one thing that is quite nice is seeing when bands blow up. And these are bigger bands now, but I've worked with them for a while and seen them go from nothing to being pretty established. And one is a Swedish band called Throne, who are basically like 90-second long bangers, and they've managed to go from started from scratch a few years ago to now going into 1,500 cap rooms on the next headline run. And it's very, very instant grab music. So if you basically just want really fun heaviness, but without too much depth. In a good way, though. Like sometimes you don't want depth, you just want brutality.
Depends what you're going for. Yeah, it's like a 20-minute album.
It's a 20-minute album, because all their songs are under 2 minutes.
Yeah,
but it just hits the spot that you need if you're in the mood for that kind of thing. But brands that I do like who are up and coming. There's a London band called Burner who are really good.
Okay, I've heard of them.
They're sort of quite. It's like if you can imagine sort of techie hardcore, I suppose. Like they're very hardcore in their attitude and vibe, but very interesting rhythmically and brutal. They're on the Church Road record label. I've never seen them live, and I keep meaning to because I love their album, which came out last year, I think. But yeah, I know. Loads of cool stuff going on.
I'll check them out, for sure.
And my other band, Case Fight, has an album out this year. I'll give that a quick plug.
There we go, sure, yes.
We just finished recording it at the end of last year, so it's being mixed at the moment.
Okay, exciting times.
Yeah.
And then I suppose because of your perspective being both in the couple of bands you are and also working in that world, you might have a unique view of the overall music scene, the metal scene, the rock scene. What kind of state is it in right now compared to, say, the last few years? Are we in a good place right now?
Do you know
Is
what?
It promising?
I think that we're in a very good place right now. I feel like everything's incredibly healthy. Like seeing bands like obviously Sleep Token and Spirit Box blow up so quickly shows that there's still a huge appetite for heavier rock music, and younger generations are really getting into it. Also seeing our shows on this tour, there are lots of young people. Like we have a really interesting spectrum. Like we go from teenagers up to people in their 70s, and seeing that amount of young people come out, and also these bands blowing up that are predominantly driven by young audiences, I think means we're probably in the healthiest state we've been in a long time. I mean, on the flip side, you've got things like Spotify, which means artists no longer make any money from music whatsoever, and music is no longer a commodity. It's basically a marketing tool for your other exercises, which isn't so healthy. And I don't know how sustainable that is. Lots of artists are sort of rebelling against it. I don't know. It's kind of difficult because Spotify have all the power. But I think in terms of artistry, I think and audiences, I think we're in the best place we've been for a long time.
What I really enjoyed is that there's people care less about, oh, I listen to this genre
Mm.
and not really anything else.
Definitely.
All things are possible for all kinds of audience members, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah, I agree.
And I had an additional point, which has just completely escaped me there. It'll come back to me. I'm sure it will. Oh, yes. I saw that Kate Nash was in the news talking about how touring in her world, and Kate Nash, she's very well known, but she's hoping to break even at the end of a tour, even at her level, because of the cost of touring. I guess, is that something that have you noticed, has that gone up? Is it more challenging than it ever has been?
Yeah, like touring is like about 35-40% more expensive now than it was pre-pandemic.
That's wild.
I think it's just the cost of everything's gone up. I think the cost of crews gone up because there's a lack of crews. A lot of people got out of it because they had no work. So just basic capitalism means
Supply demand.
Yeah, supply demand means that that's really expensive. But materials for merch have gone up. Basically, costs have skyrocketed, but ticket prices haven't necessarily that much.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was in my head, I was like, what is the possible thing that helps it be sustainable? Is it merch? Is that the biggest kind of help?
Merch is, merch is quite expensive as well. Right? Everything's got expensive, but it's just where we're at, and we've got to adapt. So although it's difficult, the music industry has never been like sort of a safe place. There's always been challenges. Things change all the time, and you've got to adapt. And that's just how it is.
Yes. I suppose if you're looking to find a very steady job, music industry is probably not the right place to be going into. No. But if you're looking for something that's
become an accountant, that's steady. Everyone needs an accountant.
There you go. But artistically, it's a pretty wonderful place to be in at the moment. At least there's hope there, and we can figure out hopefully the financials.
There's a lot of exciting stuff going on at the moment. Lots of crossover stuff. Like I work with an interesting artist that's blowing up now called Alt Black Era, and it's these two teenage girls who basically cross electronic music and rock, which isn't a new concept, but the way they do it is quite very fresh and like from a totally different perspective that I'd kind of really heard before. And I think going back to what you were saying earlier, I think people are less regimented in their choice of genres and interests, and crossing different things is very widely accepted.
The real surprise for me is like, country rock is kind of coming in again, which is amazing, via Bill Murray to a degree.
Yeah, I struggle with that simply because I quite enjoy a bit of country, but it's kind of a bit more like ironic enjoyment. Sorry, Americans, I suppose. And so they have that coming into kind of like genty music. Yeah. I haven't quite worked it out yet, but I think it's brilliant.
It's great that there's a space for it.
I think it's brilliant there's a space for it, and I think that it needs to exist, and fair play to that. I need to do some work myself to personally like it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got a busy time on tour, and good luck with the rest of these gigs, and also the film coming out with the Radar as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Cheers. Appreciate it. Well, what a wonderful individual James from Tesseract was. Really enjoyed that conversation with him. I appreciate it's a short one for the standards of this podcast, but it was in venue. They just finished their sound check and they had a live show to do later that night, which was incredible, by the way. I did a live review video of that. I'll put a link in the description to that if you're interested in how that concert was. I'll also add some links to Tesseract's online platforms so you can keep up to date with their tours that might be coming up or their new music releases. And as ever, a link to this Discord server that I myself have. So you can chat to me about music offline whenever you have time. Now, if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. There'll be more interesting interviews coming up in this series. Hopefully, you come along for another one very soon.